Grace and peace, everyone. Rev C here, back again, continuing our study on the attributes of God. And this study, we're going to look at the spirituality of God. And there are a few attributes that go along with that we'll discuss as they come up. So grace and peace, come on in. So we're looking at the spirituality of God when dealing with these attributes, these qualities. And what do we mean when we say the spirituality of God? Or some scholars, some systematic theology textbooks will call this one of the attributes of God, simplicity. Simplicity. What do we mean by the simplicity of God? This means that God is not a composite or a compound being, which means God is not composed of parts. He is a whole. He is uniquely whole. It also means that God is not limited to a specific geological location. And we'll get into those attributes that relate to those. So, simplicity of God means that God is a spirit. He is not a composite or compound being. God is not a force. God is not a force or something that you feel. Hey, grace and peace, Elder Joe. God bless you. Thank you for supporting, coming in. So when we deal with that, the simplicity of God, meaning God is a spirit. He is not composed of a physical body. So when we look at John chapter 4, and we see that Jesus encounters a Samaritan woman, and we know how the Jews and the Samaritans did not get along. And when we look at verse 10, again, John chapter 4, let me change this so you guys can see if you're looking at the screen. John chapter 4, starting at verse 9, it says, therefore, the Samaritan woman said to him, in the Greek here, it's the ha, or the hey gune, hey Samaritis. And this is emphatic because it's stressing the fact that she is a Samaritan and she's also a woman. She has two strikes against her in that culture. It says, therefore, the Samaritan woman said to him, how do you, being a Jew, ask for a drink from me, being a Samaritan, a Gunekos, a Samaritan woman? For the Jews had no dealings with, no association with the Samaritans. And so Jesus requests for her for some water. And she mocks him, and she's like, you got no dealings with me. What are you talking about? Why are you asking me for some water? And Jesus answered her and said, if you knew the Tain Dorian, the gift of God, and that gift of God is a person bringing salvation, which is Christ, who it says to you, give me to drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Living water. So we see that Jesus says, I can give you something that will satisfy your thirst forever. This is a very, unusual conversation. And then when she shows interest, Jesus then changes the subject suddenly and tells her, call your husband. She says, I have no husband. And then this brings to light an attribute of Christ, his omniscience. He knew that she didn't. He says, go call your husband, verse 16. Go call your husband and come back. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have correctly said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. This you have said truly. And the woman said, Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Notice that she uses the vocative form of kurios. Vocative is the case of direct address. So she's not calling him Yahweh or Jehovah. She is simply calling him, this is a term of respect. So she says, I see that you're a prophet. And Jesus says, she's talking about, our fathers worshipped here in this mountain. And you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. And Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem you will worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is of the Jews. It comes out of the Jews, from the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such people, these type of people, certain people, the Father seeks to be his worshipers. And then we get to verse 24. Now, I want to read it from the Greek to be emphatic. It's on my left here. Pneuma ha theos, spirit, God, or spirit is God. Emphatic position here of pneuma, spirit. Whenever the Greeks wanted to emphasize something, they pushed it to the front of the sentence. So the emphasis is on God is spirit. And those worshipers of him must worship him. This is a necessity. They must worship him in spirit, in pneumati kai aletheia, in spirit and in truth. Spirit and in truth. Jesus is giving a description of God. He says God is spirit. There's no definite article in the Greek. So it is God is spirit. Well, there's a definite article, but it goes with theos. They're the same case. Nominative, masculine, singular. So this article goes with theos. It does not go with pneuma being neuter. So he's saying God is spirit. God is spirit. And throughout history, redemptive history, God has progressively revealed that he is spirit, especially when we see the motif of his presence with his people. So God he manifests himself as a formless fire in Exodus chapter 3, Exodus 19, Deuteronomy chapter 4. God authorizes the temple where he would dwell with Israel. But it did not contain any images of him because he is spirit. So the supreme revelation that God is spirit came when Christ abolished the earthly temple and took his people as the living temple. So God is a spirit who dwells within his people. So what do we mean when we say that God is spirit? The Westminster Confession, question number 4, says, what is God? What is his nature? What is God? Does anyone know the Westminster Confession? Question number 4. What is God? And it gives the answer. God is a most pure spirit. God is he is a pure spirit, immortal, wise, understanding, simple, indivisible, and incorporeal. So when we speak about God's incorporality, God is an incorporeal being. What do we mean by that? What do we mean when we say God is incorporeal? I'm going to put that on the screen. What do we mean by this? This teaches us that God is not a material substance. He has no physical body. He has no spirit. He has no physical body. When Jesus arose in Luke 24, he told him, he says, here's my hands and my feet, handle me and see. Why? For a spirit has not flesh and bones as you see me have. But also, this teaches us that there is more to reality than the physical and the material. There is another dimension of reality, the realm of the spirit. So this God being spirit is just stressing the fact that he is not like us. He's not like men. He's not like animals. He does not have flesh and bone. He is a spirit. And some people, they picture God as some old man sitting in the sky. But in reality, he is a spirit. He is a spirit. And so, since he is a spirit, God demands worship that transcends physical things. It engages our spirits with the Spirit of God. So we have a spiritual worship. God is of a spiritual essence, and therefore he must be worshiped in a spiritual worship. And again, we see this in John 4. God is a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. In spirit and in truth. Truth, aletheia, meaning reality. We worship in him in reality. And this brings up the question: Are images of God acceptable? Are images of God acceptable? Physical images of God, are they acceptable? We know that in Jeremiah 10, it talks about how the idolater's image is a falsehood. Calvin said that God's majesty is sullied by unfitting and absurd fiction when the incorporeal is made to resemble corporal matter, the invisible a visible likeness, the spirit an inanimate object, the measurable by a puny bit of wood, stone, and gold. Calvin says that you sully God's majesty when you try to make an image of him. He is a spirit. Now, so when we look at that God is a spirit. And, some will say, well, what about a theophany? What about a theophany? When God, God's visible appearances to men. Theophanies do not teach that God has a body any more than a visible manifestation of an angel proves that they have physical bodies. Theophanies are not views of God's essence. Theophanies are not views of God's essence, but they are the sign of his special presence. And so God has appeared in a lot of different forms, a cloud, consuming fire, to show his people that uh, don't think of him as having a physical constitution like the created world. So, dealing with this, God does not have a physical body. So, what else? What else can we get from this doctrine? Dealing with God's spirit, God's invisibility. Dealing with God's invisibility, which means that God cannot be seen with human eyes. God cannot be seen with human eyes. John 1, no man has seen the Father at any time. Did I freeze? Okay, sorry guys. I think I froze there for a second. So, God is invisible. He cannot be seen with uh, physical eyes. So, if we look at another passage here, we look at First Timothy chapter 6. First Timothy chapter 6. And verse 16. Let me start at verse 15 here. Until the appearing of our Lord Jesus Christ, for he will bring about at the proper time the blessed one, Mercuria, the blessed and only sovereign. God is the only sovereign. The only sovereign, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Ha monas ekon. He alone has undyingness, immortality, and he dwells, oikon, present active participle. He continually dwells. This is an ongoing thing. Hey, grace and peace, Sister Sheila. Sister Malone, God bless you. This word oikon is a participle. It's present tense. God continually dwells. God continually dwells in unapproachable light, inaccessible light. His glory, his Shekinah glory, is unapproachable. That majesty will destroy mortal man. No one can look upon God and live. God is too holy to even look upon sinners. And so we have to conceive God as he is revealed in his word. Um, Videos on uh, they're called the different playlists on my channel. I think I'm frozen again.